You ever look at your family and think, how did we get here? Not in a cheesy, nostalgic way. I mean in the how did everything get so twisted and fake kind of way. I used to think I came from a decent family. Not perfect, but we had dinners together. We laughed at old photos. We celebrated birthdays with half-burnt cakes and off-key singing. Then somewhere along the line, things started to change. Or maybe they were always this way, and I was just too naive to see it. My name's Derek. I'm 34, single, and I guess you could say I've done all right for myself. I run a small but successful real estate firm down in Charleston. I'm not some mogul, but after 10 years of grinding and more ramen than I care to remember, I can finally afford the good wine, not just the one with the nicest label under $10. I bought my first investment property at 27. 7 years later, I own 15. But this story isn't about my business. It's about how I found out that the people you love the most can look you dead in the eyes and smile while sticking a knife in your back. I don't usually talk about my family to people outside my circle. There's a kind of shame in it, like I'm airing dirty laundry that should have been washed quietly and put away. But I can't keep this one in. It's too big, too ridiculous. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there will read this and feel a little less crazy about their own messed up family. Let me rewind to last year, back when I made what I thought was a grand gesture of love. My mom, Linda, turned 60, and I wanted to do something big. She's the type of woman who spent her life giving, packed lunches with handwritten notes, working extra shifts at the clinic just to buy us Christmas gifts, never once complaining even when the roof leaked or when Dad forgot her birthday. She raised me and my younger sister, Holly, practically on her own after the divorce. And even though things got tight, we never felt it. That woman could stretch a dollar like magic. So when I closed a huge deal in June that padded my bank account with an extra $420,000, I thought, why not finally give Mom the kind of gift she deserves? I found this little 2-bedroom beach house out on Folly Beach. Not too flashy, but right on the water, with these big glass doors that opened straight onto a wraparound deck. The second I stepped onto that creaky porch and smelled the salt in the air, I knew she'd love it. It reminded me of the trips we used to take when I was a kid, cheap motels and PB&J sandwiches, but still somehow the best vacations ever. So I bought it. Full cash offer. Clean title. I had it painted her favorite shade of blue and even stocked the fridge with her go-to snacks before I handed over the keys. I didn't even tell her in advance. I just drove her down one Saturday afternoon and said, "Happy birthday, Mom." She cried. I cried. Holly stood there snapping pics like she was filming a Hallmark commercial. Now, about Holly, she's 31, 2 years younger than me, and if you asked her, she'd say she was the creative one in the family. She went to school for interior design, but never really stuck with anything long enough to build a career. Instead, she bounced from one dream to the next: photography, online boutique, even a short-lived stint as a lifestyle coach. I helped her out more than once. Even paid her rent once during the pandemic. I didn't mind at the time. She was my little sister. She had potential. But as I got older, I started noticing this pattern. She'd show up when she needed something and disappear when she didn't. And Mom never saw it. To her, Holly was just going through a phase or figuring things out. Anyway, after the beach house surprise, things felt good. Better than they had in years. Mom lit up every time I called. Always going on about how peaceful it was there, how she could hear the waves at night and wake up to pelicans flying past the deck. I even told her she could rent it out when she wasn't using it. I offered to help manage the bookings through my company's vacation rental branch, but she waved me off. "This place is for us," she said. "For the family." That meant the world to me. It felt like I'd done something meaningful, repaid a fraction of what she gave me. And then came this year's birthday dinner. It was a small gathering. Just me, Mom, Holly, and her new boyfriend, some guy named Brent with overgelled hair and a smug face that made me want to drink faster. We went to this cozy Italian place Mom liked. Nothing too fancy, just warm lighting and good wine. The kind of place where the waiter remembers your name and brings extra bread without being asked. Everything was going smoothly. We laughed over appetizers, toasted to Mom's health, and talked about our old family dog like he hadn't been gone for 10 years. And then I said it. I wasn't trying to start anything. I swear. It just slipped out in the middle of a sip of Pinot Noir. "So, Mom, how's the beach house treating you? Been back down there lately?" She blinked, mid-bite, and gave me this puzzled look. "What beach house?" At first I thought she was joking. I laughed. glanced at Holly, expecting her to join in. But Holly had gone pale. She was gripping her wine glass so tightly I thought it might crack. You know, I said slowly, lowering my fork. The one I gave you last year for your birthday. Out on Folly. Mom shook her head, her brow furrowing. Derek, honey, I haven't been down to Folly since before Christmas. I stared at her. But, didn't you say you spent Easter weekend out there? She laughed, a little awkward now. No, I spent Easter with Holly. Remember? At her apartment. Why would I be at the beach house? The room tilted a little, like someone had pulled the floor an inch to the left. I turned to Holly. Her eyes were huge, her mouth slightly open. Brent reached over and touched her arm, like he already knew something was about to explode. I pushed back my chair, slow and deliberate, and looked directly at my sister. You transferred it to yourself, didn't you? Her silence was louder than any answer. Mom gasped softly. Brent looked at his lap like he wanted to crawl under the table. The waiter, bless his soul, chose that exact moment to arrive with the dessert menu. And that's where everything began to unravel. Part of me hoped she'd laugh, that she'd roll her eyes, call me dramatic, and explain it all away with some kind of misunderstanding. A paperwork mix-up, a legal technicality, even some surprise renovation project she wanted to keep under wraps until it was finished. I could have lived with that. Maybe not happily, but I could have lived with it. But she didn't say a word. Holly just sat there, frozen, like a rabbit caught in a car's headlights, except the car was me, and the road was my mother's birthday dinner. Her silence was an answer, a loud, deafening, gut-wrenching answer. Mom's face slowly changed, from confusion to concern, to something sharper. I could practically see her connecting the dots in real time, that maternal intuition kicking in like a sudden jolt. Holly, she said softly, turning toward her. What's Derek talking about? Still nothing. Brent squeezed Holly's wrist and whispered something, probably telling her to say something, anything, but her mouth wouldn't move. I looked between them, heart thudding against my ribs like it was trying to punch its way out. And then I made the mistake of pulling out my phone. I'd never shown Mom the paperwork before. Why would I? I trusted my family. But I had a digital copy of the property deed saved in my files, just in case. And right there, bold and indisputable, was the name of the legal owner. Holly Elaine Parker. I didn't look up when I handed the phone across the table. I just held it out for Mom. I didn't want to see the look on her face when she read it. Oh my God, she whispered after a few seconds. The waiter was still standing there, holding a dessert menu like it was a hostage negotiation pamphlet. I waved him off without looking, my hands shaking now. We'll need a minute. Holly finally spoke, her voice brittle and defensive, like she'd been rehearsing a speech but forgot half the lines. I didn't steal it, okay? I thought Mom wasn't using it enough. It was just sitting there, and I figured it made more sense for me too. You thought? I snapped, louder than I meant to. You thought it made more sense for you to own the house I bought for Mom. I wasn't going to keep it forever, she shot back, her voice cracking. I needed somewhere to stay. Brent and I were going to renovate it, and then give it back. Give it back. I repeated, standing now. You can't give back something you stole, Holly. Mom covered her mouth, tears pooling at the edges of her eyes. She wasn't crying yet, not fully, but she was right on the edge, and that's when I saw red. Was this your plan the whole time? I asked, stepping around the table. Smile for the photos, act touched, then wait until I was out of town and file a fake transfer. It wasn't fake. I had her sign it. Holly yelled, suddenly emboldened, like the truth, even in its ugliest form, was somehow better than the silence. That shut everyone up. Mom's head jerked toward her, horrified. What do you mean you had me sign it? Holly paused, just long enough. Then, remember the paperwork I gave you in November? I told you it was for refinancing your old car loan. That's when. Mom's hand dropped from her mouth, her face going blank in a way I'd never seen before. Not angry, not sad, just broken. You tricked me, she whispered. I didn't trick you, Holly muttered. I just repurposed the moment. I turned away before I said something I'd regret. My chest was tight. My hands curled into fists at my sides. I could feel years of ignored red flags rushing back at me like a tsunami. Every time Holly guilt tripped Mom into paying her rent. Every time she borrowed money and never paid it back. Every time I brushed it off because she's family. Brent stood, holding his hands up like he was at a police checkpoint. Hey, let's all just take a breath. Don't. I warned him, voice low. Don't you dare try to mediate this. We left the restaurant in silence. Mom rode with me, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. Holly and Brent drove off in his overpriced Jeep, which, I now realized, probably had something to do with that beach house renovation she mentioned. As I pulled into Mom's driveway, she finally exhaled. I feel like I don't even know her, she whispered. I didn't respond. Because the truth is, neither did I. The next few weeks were rough. Tense calls, silent dinners, half-formed apologies that fizzled out before they left Holly's lips. She sent Mom a few flowers, a note that said, I was overwhelmed. I'm sorry, but she never called me. Not once. And Mom, bless her, still clung to the belief that this could be fixed, that maybe if we just talked, things would go back to normal. But something had shifted in me, something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't just about the house. It was about trust, about being taken advantage of by someone I'd spent most of my life defending. And worse, watching them exploit the one person in the world who deserved peace more than anyone. I tried to let it go. I really did. But then Christmas came. I offered to host. Big dinner, fire in the fireplace. Even got Mom one of those stupid matching pajama sets from a catalog she loved. She said yes, hesitantly. Holly RSVP'd, maybe, and then showed up unannounced 3 hours late with Brent and a giant bottle of champagne. Like nothing had happened. Let's not make this weird, she said as she walked in. It's Christmas. I stayed civil. Barely. I cooked, I smiled, I poured wine. I kept the peace. Until Holly handed Mom a tiny wrapped box and said, This is for all your support this year. Mom opened it and gasped. A beach house necklace. Gold chain. Little charm shaped like a cottage with a seashell roof. One of those cheesy Etsy trinkets that looked heartfelt to anyone who didn't know the full story. I stared at it, then at Holly. She was smirking. That was the moment. The exact second I knew something in me had snapped. I didn't say a word that night, but the wheels were already turning. Because if she wanted to play games with property, then I'd play too. After that Christmas, I stopped going to family functions for a while. I didn't say I was boycotting them. I didn't make a dramatic exit. I just didn't show up. When Mom called to ask if I was coming to Holly's engagement dinner in March, I told her I had a business trip. When she asked about Easter brunch, I said I had a bad cold. Both were lies. I just couldn't bring myself to sit across the table from a woman who smiled while robbing her own family blind. But isolation is a funny thing. At first, it feels like a defense mechanism, like you're keeping your sanity safe behind locked doors. Then it turns into loneliness. And then shame. I started second-guessing everything. How did I not see it coming? How many times had I enabled Holly just to keep the peace? Was I some kind of sucker for thinking blood meant loyalty? I threw myself into work. Not out of some noble hustle mentality, just because it was easier than thinking. I stopped answering texts that weren't about properties or contracts. I stopped going to the beach entirely, even though I still had a few rental units out there. Every time I saw the ocean, I thought about the house. About the look on my mom's face when she realized her daughter had stolen her birthday gift and used her trust like currency. And I'll admit something here I haven't even told my friends. For a while, I wasn't okay. The worst part was how it all made me feel about myself. I kept replaying it, wondering what I could have done differently. Should I have sat Holly down years ago and given her a reality check? Should I have told Mom to stop bailing her out? Was I so desperate to be the good son that I let my sister become this entitled, manipulative version of herself? I started seeing a therapist. Her name was Rachel, and she didn't pull punches. She told me something during one of our early sessions that stuck with me. You're grieving the version of your family you thought you had. But now that the mask is off, you get to decide who's in your life and on what terms. That line hit me harder than I expected. I'd always been the fixer, the guy who stepped in, calmed things down, smoothed it over. But that version of me was tired. He'd been used up. So I started rebuilding, not just my relationships, but myself. First, I took a long, honest look at my business. I realized I'd been coasting, using my past success as a shield. I had a decent portfolio, but I hadn't expanded in nearly a year. I started attending real estate conferences again, reached out to old contacts, got serious about vacation rental partnerships. Within 3 months, I secured 2 new beachfront investment properties and restructured my company to include an in-house design team. Ironically, what Holly pretended to do, renovate and decorate, I now had actual professionals doing under my own umbrella. Next, I started nurturing relationships that actually gave me something back. I reconnected with my college buddy Marcus, a contractor who used to flip homes with me before he moved to Atlanta. We started doing small projects together again. One night, over beers, he said, "You've got this new edge to you, man. Like you've stopped trying to be the guy everyone leans on." I hadn't noticed it, but maybe he was right. I also began spending more time with my mom, on my terms. No more group dinners. No more, "Let's invite Holly and see if she shows." Just me and her. I took her out to lunch once a week. We started walking the pier together again, something we hadn't done since I was a teenager. Slowly, her spark came back. She started talking about getting a dog, asked me for help setting up her new iPad. We even started watching true crime documentaries together on Sundays. It felt like home. Not perfect, but real. I never brought up the house. Neither did she. I think we both knew it wasn't just about property. It was about betrayal, and neither of us was ready to poke that wound again. But Holly? She didn't stop. Over the next few months, she went full Pinterest princess on the beach house. I knew because she started posting about it. First, it was subtle. "Can't believe I get to wake up to this view every morning. #grateful #beach vibes." Then it got bolder. "Nothing like coffee on my porch. #home sweet home." I never liked or commented, but mutual friends would send me screenshots with a side of "what is going on." One post in particular got under my skin. It was a reel of her showing off a full renovation, before and after shots, dramatic music, Holly doing twirls in the newly decorated living room like it was an HGTV audition. The caption read, "Hard work pays off." Hard work. She'd never even swung a hammer. That's when I knew I wasn't just angry anymore. I was done. Because here's the thing. I'd spent my whole life believing that family meant automatic forgiveness. That you're supposed to look the other way, swallow your pride, and keep the peace. But what if keeping the peace just meant handing your dignity over to someone who'd sell it for throw pillows and Instagram clout? That was the fall. But here's the rise. One morning in late June, I was sitting in my office reviewing a property transfer packet when I noticed something strange. A legal form almost identical to the one Holly had used to steal the beach house. The signature line looked eerily familiar, not the name, but the way it was written. Slanted, overly neat, like someone had been trying too hard to copy a signature. That's when I remembered something. Back in November, right before Holly repurposed those forms, Mom had broken her wrist in a fall. It was a clean fracture, but she'd been in a brace for 6 weeks. She hadn't signed anything during that time. I called her immediately. "Mom," I asked, "do you remember when you signed the beach house over to Holly?" There was a long pause. Then, "I don't remember signing anything. Not when I had the brace on." And just like that, a cold clarity snapped into place. I had a hunch. A dangerous one. I pulled up the documents Holly had filed with the county. Zoomed in on the signature line. It was clean. Perfect cursive. Not a hint of a shake or smudge. Not the kind of signature someone in a wrist brace would produce. My hands trembled, but not from fear. From purpose. Because maybe, just maybe, this wasn't over. Maybe I wasn't just rebuilding my life. Maybe I was laying the foundation for something bigger. And if Holly thought she was the only one who could play the long game, she was about to learn just how patient I could be. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction I'd ever had with Holly that suddenly made more sense. Every favor she'd ever asked for, every time she'd weaponized guilt, every time she'd said something like, "You're lucky you're the smart one. I had to rely on charm." I used to laugh at that. Now it made me sick. If my mother had a broken wrist at the time that transfer was supposedly signed, and if that signature was a perfect match for her uninjured handwriting, then Holly hadn't repurposed anything. She had forged our mother's signature. And that wasn't just manipulation. That was fraud. And I was going to prove it. But I wasn't going to storm in with lawyers and threats. Not yet. That's what Holly expected from me. Big emotions, public scenes, a dramatic confrontation she could twist into a sob story for her friends. No, this had to be quiet. Methodical. I wasn't interested in yelling anymore. I wanted consequences. The first step was confirmation. I called Mom the next morning and asked her, gently, if she'd be willing to come with me to a notary public and sign her name for comparison. She hesitated. "Are you planning to sue her?" she asked, her voice thin, like she already knew the answer. "I'm planning to find the truth," I said. "And whatever that leads to, I'll handle it." You won't be involved unless you want to be. To her credit, she didn't press me further. She agreed. We met at the office of a woman I knew from previous closings, Karen, a notary I trusted. I explained what I needed. 3 sample signatures, all dated and witnessed. Mom signed them with her newly healed hand, and Karen confirmed what I already suspected. The signature on the property transfer Holly filed? It didn't match. It looks like someone trying to copy her writing, Karen said. But this one's practiced, not organic. That was the confirmation I needed. Step 2 was gathering everything I could on the transfer itself. Luckily, since I worked in real estate, I had access to tools and contacts that most people didn't. I pulled the recorded deed, the witness signatures, the date of notarization, the name of the notary listed, Marissa L. Dunham. I didn't recognize it, so I tracked her down. She wasn't hard to find. She had a small mobile notary business and still kept an active website. I sent a polite email requesting confirmation that she had personally notarized a deed transfer in November for Linda Parker. I didn't mention anything else. Her reply came later that day. Hi, Derek. Thanks for reaching out. I'm afraid I don't have a record of notarizing a deed for Linda Parker in November. I double-checked my logs for the entire month, nothing under that name. If you have a copy of the document, I'd be happy to take a look and confirm whether the notary stamp is mine. Best. Marissa. I sent her the scan. Within 30 minutes, she called me. That's not my seal, she said. The signature's forged, and the stamp number isn't mine either. I'm going to have to report this to the state. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. Thank you for confirming. I'll be reporting it as well. Now, I had 2 pillars, a forged signature and a forged notary seal. This wasn't just a civil issue anymore. This was criminal. I didn't go straight to the police. Not yet. I wanted to build this airtight. I called a friend of mine, David Lynn, a real estate attorney who owed me a favor from a complicated deal 2 years ago. I laid it all out. The house, the gift to my mother, the suspicious transfer, the forged documents. He didn't blink. You've got enough to start something. But if you're serious about pressing charges, I'd recommend documenting every step. Every email, every screenshot, every post she made bragging about the property. Judges eat that stuff up. So that's what I did. I started collecting everything. Screenshots of Holly's Instagram posts where she claimed she owned her own home now. Comments where she thanked friends for complimenting her hard work. Even DMs she sent to acquaintances about building equity. I went through the property tax history and saw that she'd changed the billing address to hers without notifying the previous owner, which, according to city code, had to be done through proper channels. Another violation. Then I dug deeper. I remembered something about the utilities. When I gifted the house to Mom, everything had been set up in my name initially, and I'd helped Mom transfer the electric and water to her. I had the receipts. But when I called the utility company now, pretending to be doing a service check, they confirmed that the current account holder wasn't Linda Parker. It was Holly. No official transfer. Just overwritten. I started to feel less like a brother and more like an investigator. A quiet storm began building in me. It wasn't loud, it wasn't explosive, it was slow and cold and inevitable. For every file I added to my folder, for every screenshot, I felt the weight of years of being manipulated melt away. She had used our mother's trust as a weapon. She had used my silence as a shield. And now, she was going to learn that some people don't stay silent forever. I kept everything under wraps for another 2 months. Didn't mention a word to Mom. Didn't confront Holly. I even liked one of her Instagram posts to keep her off the scent. During that time, I met with David twice. Once to review a possible civil suit. The second time to discuss criminal fraud and forgery charges, if I decided to press forward. He explained the difference, the possible outcomes, the risks. I nodded through it all, not yet saying which path I'd take. But I was leaning. The final piece fell into place in early September. It was Holly's engagement party. Not the official one, just a small get-together with close friends and family. Mom had been invited. I hadn't. But Mom, bless her, texted me the location anyway and added, "Would love if you just dropped by. No drama, I promise." I almost didn't go, but something in me said, show up. So I did. I wore a sharp navy suit. Not overdressed, but just enough to look like I had somewhere more important to be. When I walked into the rental hall, all pastel tablecloths and cheap fairy lights, I spotted Holly at the center of a group, champagne flute in hand, laughing like her world was perfect. She saw me. Her smile froze for half a second, then returned, plastic and strained. Derek, she said a little too loudly. I didn't know you were coming. I was in the neighborhood, I said. Figured I'd say hi. Mom beamed at me from the buffet line, clearly thrilled that I'd come. I gave her a nod. She didn't know what I was about to do. Not yet. I stayed for 20 minutes. Just enough time to shake hands, smile politely, and observe. Then, when things were quiet, I approached Holly at the bar. Hey, I said casually, swirling the ice in my club soda. Quick question. She looked up, guarded. What? That notary you used for the house transfer, Marissa Dunham? What was she like? Holly blinked. She was fine. What? I shrugged. Just curious. I spoke to her last week. She says she never met you. Her hand tightened on her glass. Oh, and the signature? The one you said Mom signed in November? She was in a brace then. Couldn't have written a grocery list, let alone a deed. She opened her mouth, but I held up a finger. Don't bother. I'm not here to fight. I just wanted you to know. I know. And soon, the law will too. She paled. Visibly. I leaned in closer. You should start thinking about what story you'll tell your fiancé when this all comes out. Because it will. And it's not going to be on Instagram. It's going to be in court. I walked out before she could respond. Didn't even look back. By the time I got to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from her. What are you doing? I didn't reply. Because I wasn't doing anything. Not yet. But the setup was complete. And the revenge? It was coming. She didn't respond to my silence with silence. No, Holly did what she always did. She panicked, then postured. The next day, I woke up to a string of texts. The first few were defensive. You're being overdramatic. You gave up your right to that house the moment you handed it to Mom. This is family stuff, not legal stuff. You're blowing it way out of proportion. But by evening, she had switched to threats. If you try anything, you're just going to ruin Mom's peace. Don't forget, she signed it. That's what matters. You'll look like the bitter brother trying to sue his sister. You sure you want to take this public? It almost made me laugh. She had no idea I'd been building a case for 3 months. That while she was posting sea glass photos and brunch selfies in my beach house, I was quietly constructing a legal fortress around her lies. So, the next morning, I executed phase 1. I filed a formal fraud report with the county clerk. Attached were notarized handwriting samples from Mom, a sworn affidavit from the notary whose seal had been forged, utility records, tax documents, and dozens of Holly's social media posts where she claimed ownership of a home she'd stolen. I wasn't bluffing. I didn't want an apology. I wanted accountability. Within 10 business days, the county opened an investigation. 3 weeks after that, a forensic handwriting analyst retained by the county concluded what I already knew. The deed signature didn't match Mom's documented handwriting from the time. That triggered the next step. I filed a civil suit for fraudulent transfer and wrongful enrichment. Mom was listed as the rightful property recipient. I was listed as a witness and plaintiff due to damages caused during the fraudulent transfer, including income lost during the time the property could have been rented, with documentation from my vacation rental business to back it up. That's when it all began to snowball. Holly didn't take it seriously at first. When she was served the papers, she apparently posted a story with the caption, "Some people just can't stand to see you win." Classic Holly. But 2 weeks later, when her lawyer, clearly more experienced than she was, saw the documentation, he sent her a very different kind of message. Because not only was the deed forged, the notary seal was fabricated, which made it not just civil fraud, but criminal. Forgery of legal documents is a felony in South Carolina. Once that charge was added to the mix, Holly's house of cards started to collapse. The authorities weren't just dealing with a petty sibling squabble anymore. This was a falsified property transaction involving a forged government seal, fake signatures, and an unlawful transfer of real estate value exceeding $500,000. I kept quiet. I didn't gloat. I didn't post anything. I stayed professional, calm, and ruthlessly efficient. Holly, on the other hand, imploded. First came the calls to Mom. Crying, begging, apologizing, in that performative way she always did when caught. I didn't mean to steal. I thought I could make it work for all of us. I was going to give it back eventually. I just wanted something of my own for once. That kind of thing. Mom listened, but she didn't bend. She told Holly, softly but firmly, "You used my trust to rob me, and then you lied about it for a year. Actions have consequences." Then came the fiancé. Brent bailed 2 days after the criminal investigation began. No warning, no breakup post, just gone. Unfollowed her on everything. I heard from a mutual friend that he'd moved back to Charlotte and ghosted her entirely. Apparently, possible felony wasn't the aesthetic he wanted for their future. Her social media went dark not long after. And the worst part for her? She had to return everything. The court ordered the property deed reversed, placing the beach house back under Mom's name, and fined Holly for any damages or unauthorized modifications made during her false occupancy, including 2 unauthorized plumbing changes that failed inspection. She had to pay back taxes, court fees, and even damages to my business for the income I'd lost while the house had been unusable. It wiped out her savings. And since she hadn't been legally working in months, just living off Instagram marketing and a vague Etsy shop, she had no income to cover it. Her credit? Destroyed. Her reputation? Worse. Word spread quickly in our family and friend circles. No one came out and said, Holly's a fraud. But people stopped inviting her to events. She lost a few collaborations. One of her old friends from design school posted a cryptic tweet about watching people crash their own brand with both hands. Holly tried to reach out to me exactly once during this entire mess. A single text. You got what you wanted. Happy. I stared at it for a long time. Then typed. No. I got what you earned. And that was the last message I ever sent her. As for Mom, she cried when the house was legally returned to her. Not because of the win, but because of the loss. She'd lost the daughter she thought she had. But in time, even that began to heal. She moved into the beach house full-time that spring. Said the sound of the waves helped her sleep. I visit her every Sunday now. We sit on the porch, drink iced tea, and watch the sunset. No drama. No lies. Just peace. Sometimes she'll say, you didn't have to go through all that for me. And I'll say, yes, I did. Because love isn't silence. Love is action. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is draw a line in the sand and hold it. For me, the revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It was quiet. Calculated. Just. And as I watched Holly pack up her things under court supervision, forced to leave the house she stole, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. Because I finally stopped trying to fix someone who didn't want to be fixed. And I took back what should have never been stolen.